You're listening to the Monocle Daily, first broadcast on the 8th of August, 2025, on Monocle Radio.
A visit to the US-Mexican border where crossings have been cut drastically, but at what cost? A roundup of stories about bears, because that really is the best thing to talk about on a Friday. And preparations are in full swing for Monocle's own Quality of Life conference in Barcelona. I'm Chris Chermak. The Monocle Daily starts now. Hello and welcome to the Monocle Daily, coming to you from our studios here at Midori House in London. I'm Chris Chermak. It is Friday, which means it's our in-house daily. My guests H.J. Mai, Tom Webb, Laura Kramer, Henry King and Carlotta Rebello. We'll discuss the day's big stories and we'll learn what we learned this week with Andrew Muller as well. Stay tuned, all that and more coming up right here on the Monocle Daily. This is the Monocle Daily and I'm Chris Chermak. We will start in the United States because on entering office for a second time this year, President Donald Trump promised a closed border and the biggest deportation operation in U.S. history. A little over 6 months in, and the Trump administration has attempted to do exactly that. The measures have been far more drastic than Trump 1.0, and the results have been just as dramatic. Nearly 150,000 deportations and a 93% reported drop in illegal border crossings. Well, Washington-based journalist and regular Monocle contributor H.J. Mai went to the U.S.-Mexico border to speak with people in communities both in Texas and California and joins us right now. H.J., good to have you back on the show. This is not the first time that you visited the border. I know you've been there a couple of times over the years. What have you seen this time? What changed?
Yeah, hey, Chris. Happy Friday. Like you said, this is not the first time, but it's the first time since Trump took office that I've been back to the border. I visited a couple towns in Texas, as you said, Eagle Pass, El Paso, and San Diego in California. And what I've clearly seen is this drastic decrease. As you mentioned, the Department of Homeland Security has reported a 93% decrease in illegal border crossings. And that's really what I've seen. The last time I went, for example, to Eagle Pass, Texas, there were hundreds of migrants were just across the Rio Grande on the banks. They were, held up there by Border Patrol. Information was taken. And this time when I went back to the same area, there's a park right there. It's called Shelby Park that has made some headlines in recent years. It was quiet. Unfortunately, the militarization is still the same. So the park is closed off. There's barbed wire in the Rio Grande. But in general, that was like the overall view that I've gotten from my trip to Texas and California is things have come down to levels that, we've seen in the past. I mean, obviously, all those border communities had to deal with migrants crossing in for decades, obviously since the establishment basically of the United States and Texas joining and California. But this is now back to normal levels. When I was in El Paso, for example, Border Patrol there, I actually went on a ride along. They told me that the daily average from the height back in late 2023, where they saw an average 2,700 border crossings, it's now down to 40 to 50. So it's back to a number that is not overwhelming to the communities. And that's what I've seen before. So clearly, as you mentioned, these drastic measures that this administration has taken are, I guess they would call it effective.
So the measures are effective. The numbers are clearly down, as you were able to witness yourself. But the question that also comes from that is whether the means justify the end. What are people saying there about how this administration has gone about reducing those numbers so drastically?
Yeah, it seems like just like everything else in this country, it really depends who you ask. When you ask their political leanings, what I've heard from both sides is that border security is important. Whether that's, whether I talk to liberal Democrats or conservative Republicans, both want border security. They've made that clear. What they disagree on is, as you mentioned, how drastic those measures should be. Republicans especially are on board with that. I talked to some guy named Michael Aboud, in El Paso. He's actually the chairman of the local Republican Party there, and he basically told me this is what it's supposed to look like. We need border security. We need to keep gangs out. And he said he's fully on board with President Trump and the administration, telling people self-deport, leave the country and try to come back legally. That's what I've been hearing constantly on my trip recently from Republicans. It's like, this is good. We don't like that, obviously, U.S. citizens, as we've seen during reports, get caught up in some of those ICE raids, immigration enforcement raids that have been happening across the country, but they're still on board. That's really, for me, was the most interesting, that we've seen polls that have said that Republicans are actually, their approval of Trump's immigration policy has come down. That's absolutely not what I've been hearing and seeing during my trip.
Well, even if you haven't been hearing that, I'd be curious if there is some sort of opposition that is developing on the ground there with people you spoke to on the Democratic side as well. What does that look like? What do they feel about the process here and what it's doing to the sort of local population of immigrants and those without status?
Yeah, I mean, the two things that I've definitely heard when it comes to that is they want more humanity restored. And the effect it has on the local population is probably the most interesting part of my whole reporting trip. There's fear in communities. All of those communities, Eagle Pass, El Paso, and San Diego, have a large Hispanic community, and there are fears within the community, which was really eye-opening to me. But what Democrats are saying is they want more legal pathways. They want the asylum system restored. I mean, Trump, when he came into office in January, basically on his first day, he basically nullified all legal asylum to the U.S. And in San Diego, I talked with immigration attorney Crystal Felix, and she basically told me how different this time around is compared to the first Trump administration. And maybe we can take a quick listen.
People are in such a desperate situation that they're giving up and requesting to be deported or sent to a different country. And so there's this administration has had time to prepare on how to attack the immigration system. And they are working fast and they're working hard and they're working in collaboration. All the agencies under the Department of Homeland Security, and I would even argue with the Department of Justice.
HJ, when you listen to that, or when we listen to that, I mean, it reflects what's going on there, but you did describe some of the fear as well. How are people responding to that fear in this current situation? I mean, they're still just like when we were at the height of this, if you want to call it a border crisis, at this crisis during the Biden administration, people in those communities are still out there. They're still trying to help. They open their homes for migrants who need the help. But what I've seen is there's definitely less public protests. There's more fear. People staying more inside, and even U.S. citizens are afraid to speak out publicly. We've seen the administration, looking, for example, at social media comments. I talked to an activist in El Paso who told me, part of her family lives across the border in Ciudad Juarez, and she, has clearly reduced her travel across the border, just walking across the bridge, because she's afraid that if an immigration officer on her way back to the U.S. looks at her social media, which is very much anti-Trump administration, that she might not, come back in. And once again, going back to this immigration attorney in San Diego, she had, the same thing to say about people staying at home, especially those who have a questionable legal status or no legal status at all.
Here in San Diego, there's a lot of families who have mixed status. Maybe the parents don't have status, but all the kids have status. And so you are seeing parents afraid to go to work, afraid to go to the grocery store, afraid to go to doctor's appointments. And so the children are stepping in where they can.
H.J. Mai, Washington reporter, thank you very much for joining us and giving us some impression of your trips to Texas and to California. This is the Monocle Daily, and joining me now right here in the studio are Monocle's Deputy Head of Radio, Tom Webb, and Monocle researcher Henry King to kick us off with our panel. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm going to start with you, Henry. We always announce your name on this daily and other shows. Our researcher, Henry King. Tell us more about yourself.
I know.
Welcome.
I'm the mysterious figure behind everything at the end of all the podcasts and the radio shows that we do. Hello, I am Henry King, and we are going to be talking about super yachts today, but also been looking at loads of different stories through Gaza to design and all across different shows.
You just research a whole bunch of stuff, don't you? I mean, you kind of learn, you get a sort of eagle-eye version of everything when you do this job.
I never leave the building. It's constant research.
Tom, you have left the building, so we wanted to talk about that because you went to see a musical this week that we kind of disagree on, I gotta say. Back to the Future's musical, but you liked it.
I did. I really enjoyed it. I think it was an infectious atmosphere. There's a lot of American tourists in London at the moment, so it was sold out. And they were wearing the T-shirts and everyone was standing up and singing. And you can't tell me you were not singing and standing Power of Love at the end. I know you were.
I mean, obviously I enjoyed Power of Love at the end. Yes, I do love some of the songs. I just felt it was a little too close to the movie. I feel like if you're going to do a theater version of a film, make it still a little fun, a little different. Like all the characters other than Doc were basically a sort of slightly lesser version of the original actors.
But the movie is so good, so why not replicate it word to word? Except Doc, he had his own character, as we discussed.
Doc did very much have his own character. Well, anyway, we did want to start, Henry, as you were mentioning, with news from the world of super yachts. And, well, just to narrow it down a little bit more, we're going to talk about Russian oligarch-owned super yachts because there is an auction that is about to happen. Tell us about it.
Yes, there is an auction about to happen. It's all about this Amadea super yacht, much bigger than probably the yachts we can all afford. But it's docked in San Diego and all interested parties need to submit a deposit of $11.6 million. That's about 10 million euros to even be considered for the great purchase power of it. I mean, America says it was owned by Russian oligarch and former politician Suleiman Kurumov. But, I mean, even pronouncing his name, Kudinatov, the former head of state oil giant Rosneft. I mean, that's going very Soviet in style back then. But he's kind of the front man of this yacht. That's what Russia claims. But America's saying it's this figure very close to the Putin government who's really in charge of it. It was seized back in 2022, but they're only really now selling it now.
Do we think, Tom, that there is like a selling point in the fact that this is a Russian asset? Do you think that there will be some other Americans or others like, ooh, I've managed to get my hands on a boat of a Russian oligarch?
It is advertised correctly as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. To get a boat that is built, a yacht of this nature, is so incredibly rare. And to come up at this price, $350 million, sounds like a lot, but it is quite cheap for what you get. You get these 8 staterooms, these gyms, private cinemas. I don't think the fact that it was owned by a Russian has anything to do with the attraction. I think the fact that you can land your helicopter on top of it is very appealing. But the fact we're talking about it, and the world is talking about it because it's so significant, does make it interesting and a good talking point, I guess.
Well, and it is the fact also that, Henry, that a lot of Russian assets are being sold right now. A lot of Russian assets have been seized. Have you spotted anything else? I mean, there's a giant number here. We're talking $280-300 billion worth of assets.
Well, exactly. I mean, a super yacht probably doesn't come close to some of the sizes of these assets that have gone. I think it's Belgium and a couple of other European countries that control around $200 billion of it. The US only really contains quite a small proportion of that, I think about $8 billion. So the yacht, at the end of the day, really isn't one of those key capital assets, but it's one of the sparkly ones. It's one of the ones that we really enjoy seeing. I mean, Tom was saying, it accommodates 16 guests and 36 crew members. I mean, it certainly sounds nicer than my flat, and I mean, a house party on the yacht would probably be nicer than my flat as well.
Tom, is this something you would go for? I mean, if you had the cash, I'm going to assume that Monocle doesn't quite pay us enough to buy a super yacht. So, but if it did, if you were in something where you're earning that kind of money, would you spend it on a yacht like this?
I wouldn't go for a yacht. I watch Below Deck, which is a reality TV series based on super yachts. You do have 2 members of staff per guest, so there's 16 of you. and there are 32 staff, or and all they do is sort of cop off with each other, and that's a very, very expensive thing to fund. I am very, very interested.
But again, if you're buying a yacht like this, money is no object. It doesn't matter.
True.
Is it just the people? Is that the problem?
That is the problem.
People there.
Very basic answer: a Greek island. I would buy a Greek island. I'm obsessed with owning a little floating piece of the Mediterranean. And Jackie Onassis had one, Scorpius Island, which I visited. I shouldn't have. Beautiful spot, but you can actually get these quite cheap.
See, that's an interesting one, because I have to say, personally, I would just travel the world as many times over and just never pay rent anywhere, I think. So it's interesting you would pick the one island instead. Maybe I'd have to add that somewhere to go back to as a base. Henry, what about you? Where would you put your money on if your career blossoms to the point where you have millions upon billions of dollars to spend?
Well, if I'm ever let out of the building. I mean, I think I would probably buy, and it was on one of the recent shows, one of those Ontario cottages. The ones out in the wilderness. I mean, billionaires and millionaires are really loving them at the minute. So I think that's a real investment. I am a bit of a yacht person. I would go for the Sunseeker 131, and BBC style other yachts are available.
Very interesting ideas there. Well, next up for our panel, we are hoping that this does not give you personally any PTSD. Wow. Yes, we are doing a roundup of news from the world of bears, as you might hear from that suggestion, because it is Friday and Lord knows there's enough serious stuff going on in the world that we figured you'd rather hear about bears. And for this segment, we are joined by our resident bear desk chief, who also moonlights as a Monocle senior producer. That is Laura Kramer. Laura, give us your bear credentials. You have just wandered into the studio during that wonderfully timed bear warning and growl.
Thank you, Chris. I was promoted to Bear Desk Chief, actually, last year, really, around the time of Fat Bear Week, which is, I think we all know when that happens.
We do love covering Fat Bear Week.
That's right. And as it so happened, not only did I guess which bear would come out victorious, which was Grazer, as everybody I'm sure remembers, but I also guessed the top 3 correct. So that is how I got promoted to Bear Desk Chief. And also, I've written about bears in Romania. I have a TikTok video right now of bears in Romania. So I think, Chris, don't question my bear credentials, please.
I would never question your bear credentials. We're at almost the 1-year anniversary of your Bear Desk Chief. It's a very important moment.
It's coming up.
But Tom, I want to start with you because we're going to Japan for a first story. The Japanese are being allowed to take matters into their own hands after a few bear-related injuries.
Record bear-related injuries. In fact, 2023 was the biggest number of bear attacks in Japan, and this year they're on track to reach that target. This is post-pandemic, a lot of bears entering urban areas, and people don't know how to deal with them. So the bears have been acting out and attacking, and these numbers have actually meant that the government are now allowing people, individuals, to own rifles to shoot at them during these moments. And if you are shooting guns and there are issues with insurance, there's fire going into sort of cars, and so the laws are changing in Japan, which means you can hunt and be insured to do so.
This was one of my questions, Laura, as Bear Desk Chief. What do you think of this idea of shooting at bears, and can people actually be trusted to do that?
Well, as Bear Desk Chief, I think I have to advocate for the bears.
It sounded like from the insurance, though, that nobody's actually going to hit the bears. This is mostly going to hit buildings instead, but yes.
Yeah, probably. But I mean, I think we want a healthy bear population, but I think what's happening, well, really the world over, is we know that their environments are being depleted of their natural prey that they have, and we're kind of encroaching on their own space. I think there has to be ways that we work with our natural big beasts and big mammals that are around us. But obviously, we don't want anybody to be hurt, do we? And let's remember, there are some parts, for example, in Norway, where you have to carry a gun with you because of polar bears, and polar bears will actually go out of their way to hunt humans. They're the only species that really do that. And so we see that there's this clash between humanity and wilderness, but as Bear Desk Chief, I think we also have to protect the bears.
There is a balance here. And Henry, speaking of that balance, you bring us tales from Canada. What do the spirit bear and salmon population of British Columbia have in common?
Yes, tales from my side of the world, or my hopeful side of the world in the future. So it's all about this Commodie bear, and it's a subspecies of the American black bear. So it's already much, much rarer than your average bear that you might see on a Japanese street. And then what makes it even more special than that is there's this recessive gene that's activated, and that's what gives it this white cream coloration. And that's what people flock to the Great Bear Rainforest with their Canon, their Sony, their Nikon, everything, and their very, very long lenses. And that's what tourists fawn over. But the decline of the salmon population, that's really the story. And it's decreasing, and therefore these special Commodie bears are decreasing. And even people in local universities, like the University of Victoria on Vancouver Island, they study them for years, and they can't see them. So how can we as tourists and people going it be expected to see them?
Laura, if we are not expected anymore to see these bears necessarily in British Columbia, what would be your suggestion as Desk Bear Chief? Where should we go?
Where should you go to see bears, or these specific bears?
Any bears.
Well, in Romania.
Or these specific bears.
You can go to a zoo in many places. In Romania, it's on the Transfăgărășan Road. Of course, you know it. It's a very famous road. They come to the side of the road, actually, because they're used to the tourists, like giving them little bits of apple and stuff, which they probably shouldn't be doing. It's just making them a little bit more familiar with humans and being around humanity. But you can see bears everywhere in Canada. Of course, Alaska, great for spotting bears. So they are everywhere.
They are in many places. I do have to say, personally, I've also did have the pleasure of seeing the pandas in China on a visit to Chengdu. Tom, do you have any memories of bears? Any places you've looked for them in your life?
I did. I actually went looking for the sun bear in Taiwan, and I was successful. Very, very small, have a lovely sort of moon crescent on their chest. Quite naughty. They like to go into boats and untie them and float down the river, which is actually what had happened. But Taiwanese people could not believe that I managed to spot one in the wild. I guess I was very lucky. And likewise, Chengdu, the panda center in China, was absolutely breathtaking.
Absolutely fabulous, wasn't it? So many pandas in one place. Well,
I do want to say, though, you don't always, if you go to a zoo, you're not always going to see the actual bears, though. Because do you remember a few years ago, it was some people dressing up in bear costumes because they didn't actually have them. So I should take that back. It's not always a guarantee. It might be some dude in a bear costume.
In a bear costume. Don't always go to the zoo. Go to the real thing. Unless, Henry, maybe this is what they're going to have to start trying to do in British Columbia.
Or maybe they will have men in suits just roaming around the Great Bear Rainforest, and tourists will then be happy with their $5,000 that they've spent. They'll go home happy.
Well, finally, we did just want to talk about one particular video that has been going around. I have to say, this was even like just half an hour ago sent to me by my father, having no idea we were going to talk about this on air. Laura, catch us up to speed on the Pomeranian that scared Bear.
Well, you basically just said the whole story, Chris. That was the story. A black bear entered a house, and a little tiny, 6-pound Pomeranian barked at it and chased it out of the living room. And it's all on camera, actually. It was one of the security cameras that captured the whole thing. He looked properly scared. The bear looked terrified. And the woman who's Pomeranian, I can't say that word, Pomeranian. It's a tough word. She says that the Pomeranian is now feeling very egotistical. It's feeling very high and mighty about itself. Like its Napoleon complex is through the roof.
I mean, as you should. I mean, it wasn't even just in the house. I was amazed. The bear just kept running through the garden and the Pomeranian just kept chasing it. Henry, is this good advice for British Columbia or anywhere else? Would you sort of advise humans? Just shout and scream at a bear as loud as you can.
I mean, on a serious note, there is a really common phrase in Canada. And when you're facing off with bears, they say, if it's black, fight back. If it's brown, lay down. And if it's white, good night. That's referring to the polar bear, of which you see one. And often you see them in a snowstorm. So you get these T-shirts that they sell at your kind of Camden-esque T-shirt stores. And they have little polar bears, just the eyes on it. And it's polar bear in a snowstorm. And that's all you see, the eyes.
That's it. Tom, can you top that? I mean, are there any other... What did you make of this video? And are there any others that compare that you've seen in the past? Sort of that David versus Goliath success in the animal kingdom?
I rock pooled a lot as a child, and when I'd move a rock, there'd be a tiny little crab, and it would always have both claws out, and I always had to back down, no matter how tiny the crab. My cat did also fight off a fox in my house. That happened as well. So there are plenty of examples out there.
Laura, I feel like one just came to your mind.
Well, just because Tom brought up his cat. My cat, Stevie, recently had to go to the vet to have some vials of blood taken. And they had 4 people trying to hold her down, and it still was unsuccessful. Fully grown adult humans trying to hold down this very fat cat, I should say. So I was really surprised how nimble she was, despite how obese she is. She still managed to move around so quickly. But in the end, they ended up having to give us like some drugs to give her in order to bring her back next time a little bit more zoned out in order to get this done. So we had to set up a totally different appointment. Probably just for the money, let's be honest.
Yeah, but drugs before arrival, that's quite a step to have to take. Laura Kramer, Tom Webb and Henry King, thank you all for joining us. This is the Monocle Daily. And now for some in-house news on the Monocle Daily, because next month we'll see many Monocle staffers, contributors and guests descending on the city of Barcelona for our annual Quality of Life conference. And among those deep in the planning for that conference is Monocle's senior foreign correspondent and executive producer, Carlotta Ribello, who joins me right here in the studio. Carlotta, how are you feeling? How's it all shaping up? Have you had any heart attacks yet?
No heart attacks yet, and we have about less than a month to go now. So we're really getting to the last few weeks of planning, and it's just fantastic to see the conference take shape. And I think this is our 10th edition. We've been running this conference for a while. Of course, we skipped 1 year because of COVID, and it almost feels like a celebration. We've done 10 of these. Well, we haven't done the 10th just yet, but 10 conferences in, and it will be fantastic to not only look back at what quality of life means for us at Monocle throughout the past couple of years, and how these leaders from the worlds of business, fashion, diplomacy, you name it, Chris, are thinking of the world today and what the future brings.
Well, I want to talk about some of the potential guests and topics, but first, tell us about Barcelona. Why are we going there?
Yes, we're going to Barcelona because this is a city that, always features in our quality of life index, known, of course, for exactly that. You can be in an office to have a corporate career, dip out for a swim at the beach at lunchtime and be back at your desk all within a lunch hour. But it's not just that. It's the connection. It is the openness to talent, to all these interesting creatives that have moved to the city. And also, the fact where it sits. It is a bubbling metropolis on the Mediterranean that is bringing more and more people to it, not just with tourism, as we know, but actually to move to the city and who are trying to make this a better place to call home as well.
Well, tell us a little about where we will be doing this within Barcelona. What's your sense of the venues? What can guests expect?
Yes, so the main conference, it will be happening at the Palau de la Música, which is one of the most, I'd say, iconic cultural landmarks of the city. It is a beautiful building right in the center of Barcelona. Now, what guests can expect at the Palau, and this is the main conference day on the 5th of September. Just a little under a month from now, we will have discussions ranging from fashion, where we will be hearing from Adriana Dominguez. She is the CEO of Adolfo Dominguez, one of the most iconic fashion brands in Spain, and she has taken over the label from her father. So this idea of reinventing what made in Spain looks like and bringing heritage brand into modernity. So that's just one of the highlights. I'll keep going, Chris, because we have many more. We also have, staying in Spain, the CEO of Isdin. Now, this is Juan Naya, and Isdin is an incredible skincare sunscreen brand. So what is the secret to a healthy glow? Well, I will tell you right after the conference, because he'll be telling us all about the science of skincare and how you can continue to be, healthy and tanned, which I think is part of the reason why Barcelona brings us good quality of life.
And you certainly need your sunscreen in Barcelona, of all places. It can get pretty warm there.
It can get pretty warm. warm. And because of that, it's really important that we think about how cities are planned. That brings us to some of the fantastic cast of architects and designers we have on board. We'll be hearing from Emre Arolat, who some listeners might be familiar with. We first met him earlier this year in the UAE. This is a Turkish architect that is creating new spaces that really echo the soul of their environment. And he'll be telling us how he has sort of reimagined what a prayer space can look like. Another design panel that we have is actually with Javier Marcet. This is from the Spanish lighting company Marcet, and with David Martí from Santa & Cole. And we'll be hearing about why Spain is so good when it comes to good lighting, and how actually, dimming the lights a bit and thinking about how we illuminate our spaces can impact how you rest, how creative you are, can really influence, again, going back to this idea of quality of life. And just finally, on the design side, we also are hearing from the Japanese designer Keiji Takuchi. Now, he had an exhibition this year at the Salone del Mobile, and he basically has crafted this exhibition looking at walking sticks and how you can age with dignity. So how do you bring mobility into old age in a way that is an extension of your personality? So that's just some of the highlights, Chris.
Very excited to hear about walking sticks. Just finally then, Carlotta, how are the guests shaping up? The kind of people that are coming to this, can people still sign up to join?
Absolutely. There's still a few spots left, and to find out all about it, people should head over to monocle.com and to our events page where they can read the full program. Some speakers still to be confirmed, so it's not complete just yet, but it's pretty much there. So it gives you an idea of what to expect. On top of the conference, these are 3 days wholly curated by our team, by Monocle's in-house staff. So we'll have a welcome reception at the incredible Miro Foundation to set the tone for the event. Then we have the conference. There is a dinner at La Paloma, one of the most iconic dance hall institutions in the city, and an after party as well at an undisclosed location. Just if you have a ticket, you find out. And then on the Saturday, it is our classic day of cultural and landmark tours, and this is when our editors have secured exclusive behind-the-scenes access to venues that are not usually open to the public, or if they are, this is a private tour where it's just for our attendees, followed by a farewell brunch at the iconic La Fabrica. Now, this is the HQ of Beaufield Architects, and they have redone this incredible building, as the name hints at, an old factory, and this will be a very special moment for everyone involved.
As always, Monocle's Quality of Life conferences take you behind the scenes of the cities we go to as well. Carlotta Rebello, thank you very much for joining us. This is the Monocle Daily. This is the Monocle Daily, and finally for today, Andrew Muller may be absent from hosting this very show today, but he is here in spirit and brings us his weekly rendition of what we learned.
I'm my own grandpa. I'm my own grandpa.
We learned this week that our confident prediction of a couple of weeks back to the effect that noted American conservative thinker Candace Owens was pretty much going to write these things for us for the next little while had been proved gloriously correct. We learned, yes, that despite the threat of expensive legal action from the President of France, pundit and dingbat Owens was all in on the theory that the First Lady of France, Brigitte Macron, was in fact born a man, name of Jean-Michel Trogneux, and or is her own brother, or something.
I'm my own grandpa. I'm my own grandpa.
Lonzo and Oscar there with their 1947 hit I'm My Own Grandpa, also recorded by Ray Stevens, Willie Nelson and the cast of The Muppet Show, among others.
Come on. Just get on with it.
Just trying to broaden horizons. We learned that Candace Owens had been saying things in public again where people, very much including the Macron's legal team, might be able to hear her.
It's plausible that Brigitte Trogneux got sick. that the real Brigitte Trogneau got sick and perhaps had a dying wish to help her brother, Jean-Michel Trogneau, who was living perhaps as Veronique, right?
Right?
Again, we're surmising there's no evidence that Brigitte Trogneau died. There's no evidence of that. But that's what it feels like to me.
Famously, if there's one thing that lawyers for the defendants in a libel suit enjoy as they prepare for court, it's their client cheerfully admitting that there is no evidence for anything they have claimed. We should pace ourselves, however, as Owens is probably not yet done delighting us. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Besides which... we learned that at least one entity is running shorter of cash than even Owens herself may be if President Macron's learned friends somehow convince a judge that a mother of 3 children is in fact a woman. We speak of the Republic of Iraq, officials of which have spent recent days wearily addressing rumours that the contents of the national treasury have been eaten by mice. We initially learned, or at least read reports in vaguely respectable news outlets to the effect, that squeaking rodents had inveigled themselves into the pertinent storage facilities and chomped through a quantity of cash equivalent to $47 billion, a tidy old stack, indeed an amount roughly 1/6 of Iraq's GDP. However, we swiftly learned that the only actual source for this story appeared to be basically the internet. But we learned again that in our benighted epoch, this will do for the excitable and lack-witted, a cohort sufficiently hefty as to move markets and to therefore flush out exasperated government spokesfolk to deny everything. We learned that the unlucky flunky was Mudha Mohammed Saleh, a financial advisor to Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, who sighed wearily as follows, as will be sighed wearily by Monocle's disconsolate rebuttals desk chief, Fernando Augusto Pacheco.
Such a rumor is economically illogical and unbelievable.
About which we, for one whimsical news monologue, were pretty disappointed as, and here is the real reason we have even included this item at all, we'd already spent most of a day workshopping gags related to the fact that the Iraqi currency is the dinar, which sounds a bit like dinner, and obviously if the mice had eaten same, you can imagine the sweeping vista of possibilities that would have spread before us. But we had also learned of a means by which Iraq might have been able to recover some of the losses. Let's have, by way of appropriate setting, some Danish folk song. Because
at Aalborg Zoo in northern Denmark, the Circle of Life is getting some help by putting pets on the menu.
We learned that, yes, Aalborg Zoo was soliciting unwanted mice, rabbits, chickens, guinea pigs and creatures up to and including smallish horses to serve to the zoo's exhibits. We learned that all pets thus donated would be diligently euthanized before being flung over the fence, and that furthermore some sort of tax break was on offer where the horses were concerned, presumably to entice citizens trying to keep their finances stable, not wishing to be saddled with debt, etc. Sadly, however, the fact that Iraq's money hadn't been eaten by mice after all rather undermined the linking device, so this whole thing has been a total waste of everyone's time. Although, and here possibly is where we turn this thing around on the subject of total wastes of everyone's time,
Young musicians from South Africa and Zimbabwe have broken the world record for the largest marimba ensemble.
Yes, we learned that a new world record had been set for the largest number of marimbas played simultaneously, specifically 1,276, from which we learned that 1,276 marimbas being played at the same time sounds like this. Actually pleasingly hypnotic. We learned upon further research that this absolutely belted the previous record for massed marimbas, a relatively wretched 505 assembled by Guatemala in 2021.
Rubbish.
Bunch of losers. That's
pathetic.
pathetic.
That is so
lame.
I'm not
Oh my
impressed.
God, embarrassing.
Nevertheless, challenge accepted. All we need is 1,277 people to bring their marimbas to Midori House, let's say next Thursday at 2.
Please do not actually bring marimbas to Midori House next Thursday at 2, or indeed at any other time.
For Monocle Radio, I'm Andrew Muller.
Thank you very much, as always, Andrew, and to all the contributors in there for what we learned. That is all the time we have for this edition of the Monocle Daily. A big thanks to my panelists today, Tom Webb, Laura Kramer, Carlotta Rebello, H.J. Mai, and Henry King. Today's show was produced by Tom Webb, researched by Henry King, sound engineers Faith Eden and Mariella Bevan, and Flynn Simons. I'm Chris Chermak here in London. Have a good weekend. Goodbye and thanks for listening.